Hello, good morning, everybody. Hope you are all well and getting on with life in the way that we are right now. I'm just going to launch straight into the lesson today. I've got no new updates for you regarding your qualification or anything, so let's just get cracking straight away. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is script writing and storytelling. I know some of you might already know how to write a script, or you might have seen a script before, but I've got a really good software for you, which you just download from the internet. It's free. That kind of does most of it for you. You can put it in a Word doc and do it that way if you want to, but it takes much longer to do it that way, rather than just using something that's been built for actual script writing. But before we do that, I just want to go through the kind of basics of script writing and what it is and how it's different. So here we have a very typical script. This is exactly what a script should look like. This is, if anyone has seen The Godfather, this is a scene from The Godfather. So I'll just kind of go through the individual elements of this script so you can see what they are and what they're used for. So the first one here is int Don's office day. So every scene needs to be set. This is your scene setting. So you do this by writing where the scene is taking place. Int means interior, so inside, and ext means exterior, which is outside. So the format is to say whether you're inside or outside, what the actual location is, and then the time of day. So we've got inside, we're in Don's office, and it's the daytime. Okay, so that just sets the scene straight away. It doesn't need to be any more detailed than that. Then this is the action. So this is the description of what is happening in this scene. So it needs to paint a really good picture of what's happening before the dialogue takes place. So where are your characters at this point in time? So Hagen is alone in the office. He is drinking. He looks up at the sound of cars. The Caporgimes, sorry, I don't know what the word is, are arriving. Then he hears footsteps. The doors open, and in a robe with slippers, Don Corleone slowly enters the room. He walks directly to his stuffed armchair and sits down. His face is stern as he looks into Hagen's eyes. So you can really start to picture it, what is going on with these two characters. Okay? Right. Then the character who is speaking, the first person who speaks in this conversation, is Don Corleone. So his name is in capital letters, so we know that he is the one that is speaking. And then it's followed by his dialogue, and then in between him speaking and saying something else is a little bit of action between the dialogue. So you should really be able to kind of see how this scene is exactly playing out. Think about what characters are doing in between their lines of dialogue. So the dialogue hasn't stopped. Don Corleone is the next person speaking, but during his first line of dialogue, Hagen rises and pours a glass for the old man. So we can sort of imagine that he says something and then the other person gets up and does it, and then he carries on speaking. Okay, so in parentheses here, in brackets, we've got the word quietly. So if the character needs to say something in a certain way, that direction is placed in brackets before the dialogue. So shouting, quietly, angrily, whispering. So that lets the actor know how they're going to perform that line. Okay. And you can put in pauses. So think about how you could use a pause for dramatic effect. You're not just going to have dialogue, 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 especially if you're doing scenes where I know a couple of you are doing horror films. So you might want to create a bit of tension, so you might stick a pause in between some lines of dialogue. Okay, now next one. So this is not The Godfather anymore, this is another film, but it's another example of a script, and there's a couple of extra bits on here that I want you to have a look at. So here we have editing transitions. So you want to add these so that you know that the scene is going to be changing, and they're good instructions as well for whoever then edits your film. In the real world, the script writer wouldn't also be editing like you guys are, so you would want the editor to know when the scene is changing and how they're going to make that transition. So now we know that there's a scene that's happened before that's ended with John saying, well, one can't have everything. And then there's a new scene. Okay, so we're outside John and Mary's house and it's kind of ongoing. So when a new character is introduced to the story, their name appears in the narrative instruction in capitals. So this is the first time that we see Mike. So he is in capital letters. We know Mary because we've seen her before. So her name down here is in a lowercase. Okay. Any sound effects in the scenes are also written in capital letters to signify that they will be audible sounds. So they're things that are going to be added in that we can hear. So rather than just having the description of the front door clicks and door creaks as little as it's opened, he's put it in capitals so that we know that we're going to hear a clicky sound and a creaking sound while that action is playing out. Okay, so O.S in brackets here indicates the dialogue is taking place off screen. So we can't see Mary, but we can hear her. So she's obviously in another room. John comes in and she shouts through from another room. Continued indicates that the character is still talking. If some action has taken place between lines of dialogue, continued is added to tell you that they're continuing their dialogue. So like before, we had Don said something and then Hagen got up and poured him a drink and then he carried on. You can put continued there to say that she is continuing her speech and it's kind of a continuous dialogue. Okay. So that's kind of the very basics of screenwriting. I could go over it all day with you, but it's really not until you start to practice it that you really get it. So I'm going to show you this program called Celtex, which is really good. You don't have to download it onto your computer. You can just use it straight online. So it's really easy to use. Now there's a few headings here, so I've written out what the headings are in the PowerPoint so you can refer to that, you can refer back to it because they're called things that you may not necessarily know what that is. So I've just kind of done like a glossary of those terms for you so you know what each one is. So when you're writing, if you know what you need to do next but you're not sure what the heading is on Celtex, then just come and have a look at this. Okay, so let's get Celtex up. Okay, so this is what Celtex looks like when you log in. You can use your college logon for this if you don't want to use your personal. And you kind of have this sort of dashboard area here. So what you do is you go over here to New Project, click on that. Film and TV is what you are making. Choose your project name. So we'll call it Short Film there. And don't worry about where it says 1 episode, 2 episode, that doesn't really apply, just leave it at 1 and then click Create Project. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to write a screenplay. So we click on Screenplay here and then it opens up the Celtex script editor, which is pretty cool. Okay, so this is what it looks like. It kind of just looks like a Word document, but it's been designed specifically for creating screenplays. So up here you've got your scene heading. This is kind of where you have all your controls for all the different things that you're gonna be making. So you could there's shortcuts here, so if you want to just sort of switch between the two without clicking, then you can just learn the shortcuts. So our scene heading is the first thing that we want to put in. So let's say we are in interior, so we're inside Ellie's kitchen early evening. Okay, so that's where we are. So now we want to go for an action. Oh no, so that is where we are. Okay, press enter and it tabs down and it automatically changes it to action for you, which is really helpful. So it's kind of telling you what you need to be doing next. So Ellie is in the kitchen making dinner. Okay, so it's just really straightforward. Ellie is in the kitchen making dinner. Press enter again and then you could maybe have some dialogue happen. So Ellie So it moves the cursor into the middle for you. You press enter, and then it takes it down. Up here you see it says dialogue. So now you can put some dialogue in. I am making dinner. I don't know why I would say that to myself, but I am. And then you press enter again, and then it goes up here, it goes back to character again. So you can kind of start to build a dialogue between two people. So let's say Matt, my husband, walks in, and he says, so you see it's changed back to dialogue again. What are we having? Okay. So really kind of, yeah, it's really intuitive and how to kind of do it. So let's say I'm going to shout the next line. So if we go here to dialogue and go to parenthetical, it puts the brackets in for you. Shouting, enter, changes to dialogue. Lasagna. No, I can't spell lasagna. Lasagna. Okay, so say we want to cut this scene now. So we go to transition and fade to black. Okay, and then as soon as you press enter again, it does another scene heading for you. So you can really kind of start to build your script from this. So here's one that I did earlier as sort of preparation for you, along the same kind of lines. It is me still making dinner, because that just seems to be one of the things that I am doing most regularly at the moment. So here we are. So I've just sort of very, very quickly put this together. So we've got here the scene heading, interior, Ellie's house, early evening, action. So if you watch here, you'll see it change as we go through. Ellie is in her kitchen making dinner. She has the radio on and is frying some onions in a frying pan. Her husband, Matt, enters the kitchen and walks to the fridge. So a good bit of action that kind of helps set the scene for you. Matt, dialogue, what's for dinner? Ellie, dialogue, spaghetti bolognese. Action, Matt pauses and looks at Ellie. He raises his eyebrows at her. Matt, do we have any garlic bread? Action, Ellie pauses and puts down the wooden spoon. She takes a step back in shock and covers her mouth with her hands. Ellie, hysterically. So we've got the parenthetical there of how this line is going to be delivered. No, we don't. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Action, Matt takes a deep breath and looks over at his wife. Matt, I'm on it. Ellie, but we're in a lockdown. How are you going to get bread? Matt, I know a guy. Action, Matt leaves the room. Ellie wipes away the tears from her eyes and gets back to cooking the dinner. Transition, fade to black, end of scene. And then there'll be the next scene. Okay, so I hope that's kind of fairly straightforward for you. It's a really, really helpful software, and it doesn't require you to download it or anything. You can just do it straight on the browser, which is awesome. Another really great thing that you can do, so if you go back to your studio and you've got your short film here, you can then share it with your partner. So you could then send it to the person that you're working on with and say, what do you think of what I've done so far? Would you mind writing the next scene? And then you kind of are co-writing it together without you actually being with each other, which is really nice. You could even put in here your message and then share it with them, and then they can edit it and send it back. So yeah, that's pretty much that, which is really cool, and a really helpful, easy, free tool to use. There are other things that you can do on here, so you can use cell text to make your storyboards if you like. I don't know how many of you are good at drawing, but you may prefer to do something like a storyboard because you can upload photographs instead, and you choose here what the shot type is. And you describe it here, and then you can put a shot in just by uploading some photos, or you can actually build it with characters and things like that. So it's quite a fun way of learning to visualize your piece. But I think for now, the best thing to do maybe to just stick with script writing. Okay. So as I said, I'm not going to necessarily set you a task associated with this today, because I'm just conscious of giving you too much to do. But those of you that are ready and have your story kind of written out and you're ready to go and start writing a script, then by all means go ahead and start writing your script. And if you can just send it to me, that would be really great. I'll put a assignment onto Google Classroom, but I won't put a deadline on it, just so that those of you that aren't ready to script, you don't then miss a deadline. But those of you that are, you can still submit it online. Okay, all right, take care everybody, and I will catch up with you next week. Bye.